Hi everybody, I'm Gerard Labuskachny and welcome to Zulu Alpha Firearms channel. We're here at GOSA's offices in Johannesburg today. We're speaking to Annika Rosley, who's the in-house counsel for GOSA. And we're going to be talking about the recent court appearance that GOSA had in terms of the interdict they took out in 2018. So a short while ago they were in the Supreme Court of Appeal, or technically not in the Supreme Court as you'll see in a moment. And we're going to find out a bit more about what's the history of this whole event and where, of course, more importantly, is this whole thing going. So Annika, welcome. Thanks very much for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's look at the first question. What was the reason that GOSA actually went and took out the interdict in 2018?
So what happened was the police had on their system, they dislocated, made it impossible for people who had expired licenses to apply for the renewal of their license. It was previously possible. A directive was sent out and that made it impossible. GOSA felt that that was unfair, it was unjust, and we decided to take them on in that matter. We brought an urgent application to try and force the police to allow you to, upon good cause, which is what the Act provides for, to apply for that renewal of the license. We, as I said, brought an urgent application, and on late a Friday evening, this matter was heard, and we obtained an urgent interdict prohibiting SAPS from confiscating your firearm or taking any steps against you.
So essentially what the unfair part of it was that SAPS had been allowing you, if I understand correctly, to actually renew the licenses, whether they were a month or two late. But suddenly the decision without informing anybody or consulting was that they're now no longer allowing their members to renew people's firearms licenses.
Correct. The forms actually make provision for you to apply after your license has expired. The Act makes provisions. SAPS just decided that they will no longer allow that.
So ultimately, the Act normally says you're supposed to apply 3 months, and they're kind of strict about that. It's literally not 3 months and a week, and it's not 2 months and 20 days. It's literally that tiny little window period before your license expires that you're allowed to actually to renew it. Is that correct?
Yes. You must, within 90 days before the expiry of your license, apply for the renewal of that license.
So Annika, what's happened in between 2018 when the interdict was taken out, and now recently at the end of May when we were at the Supreme Court of Appeal?
Okay, so apart from a lot of legal letters being sent between the parties, the police decided to appeal against our our interdict, which was an interim interdict pending our main application. If they had just allowed us to finalize the main application, it would not have been necessary to appeal against this interim interdict. But they, very late, applied for this appeal. They asked for condemnation, and then that was heard on the 22nd of May.
So for me, the irony of it is the SAPS were applying to submit something to the court late beyond the normal time period, which is exactly in a sense what we, GOSA and gun owners in South Africa were actually hoping to be able to do, is to renew their licenses late.
Exactly, because we forgot, and in effect that's what they did. Apart from the administrative failures within the state, they simply just forgot to apply within the time. And as you say, that's what we did, which is...
So what actually happened on the 22nd of May when GOSA was actually at the Supreme Court of Appeal dealing with this matter?
So the court heard the condemnation application for the late filing of the appeal. The court decided to, as you say, it doesn't make sense that we're not allowed to, but they were allowed to appeal. The court heard the appeal, they heard both arguments. What was very unique about this appeal was instead of going to court and having the appeal heard in court, it was like a Zoom interview with all the judges and our counsels. And we were able to live stream that onto our Facebook page, which helps our members. They can go watch and see what's happened. Judgment has now been reserved. It should take 2 to 3 weeks from the 22nd. It could potentially take longer for us to get this judgment.
Now, I was watching some of it. Obviously, it went on for quite a few hours, and it was really great to be able to see the arguments taking place. And I know if I was looking at the comments on the GOSA's Facebook page, a lot of people were quite critical of GOSA's legal counsel that was actually dealing with this. I know personally, having been in the police, that it's not over till it's over. Is there anything you'd like to say to the people who were perhaps watching or just looking at the comments in general on the GOSA's Facebook page?
Look, our papers were in order. Our counsel did his job and he did it to his full extent. And if you take into consideration that he did this at a minimal charge, he does not have an expired license, but he went and stood there for 500,000 people who are in that position. So I think it's to a certain degree, unfair to judge him, especially if you don't know what's going on there, if you don't have a legal background.
And what's going to be happening next? Irrespective of whether it's a positive outcome for GOSA or a negative outcome in terms of the interdict and the appeal, what's the next stage?
Okay, so whilst all of this has happened, there has been an amnesty which ended on the 31st of May. Because we didn't receive this judgment which we were hoping for, we have suggested that people make use of the amnesty simply because the judgment can go either way. Our interdict could be kept in place. The Supreme Court of Appeal could rule in our favour and this interdict could be in place. In which case, SAPS still cannot confiscate your firearm or take steps against you. The issue is that should the Supreme Court of Appeal decide to set aside our interdict, then the police deem you to be in possession of an illegal firearm and the minimum jail sentence for that is 15 years. So based on that, we have advised people to not get caught in that situation should our interdict get set aside and to make use of this amnesty which has now ended.
So the amnesty would then in effect be that you're not renewing your license.
No.
You're actually, it's now essentially the state has suddenly become a firearms dealer. It's their weapon and you're actually applying for a license for it as a brand new applicant for that license.
Yes, so you would surrender your firearm. You surrender, and this is something that I've discussed with so many members that are upset about this. You surrender the firearm, you give up all of your rights to this firearm. And then you have to hand in a brand new application as if the firearm is not yours for the license, and then hope you get your firearm back.
Okay. And has that amnesty now been extended?
So the Police Portfolio Committee, which is a subcommittee within Parliament, has voted for the extension. Parliament still has to sit and decide. But if you look at what happened within the PPC, we can almost with certainty say that the amnesty will get extended.
Okay. And let's say, for example, the interdict is turned down, like you say, as one possibility. Does that still mean that there's a case that GOSA has pending SAPS about the whole issue, or is that kind of the end of it in terms of what GOSA is doing?
No, we will never stop. If the interdict is set aside, that is not the end of our court case. Remember that it's an interim interdict, which means should it get set aside, we will set down our main application on a somewhat urgent basis to get the necessary relief.
Okay. And of course, if it's upheld, you still then will continue with that main application.
Of course. No, the main application is going ahead either way. We just had to wait for the appeal to be heard before we could set down the main application.
Okay, so that really just held things back for a while.
Yes.
Okay. So people speak a lot about the amnesty, but are they actually effective in dealing with illegal firearms?
So our position has always been that an amnesty is a great tool to get illegal firearms and true illegal firearms off of the street. The problem with this specific amnesty is that it has been used as a tool to focus on people with expired licenses. So yes, if you could go drop your illegal firearm, if you're a criminal and can go drop your illegal firearm in a box at the police station without fear of prosecution, then that is wonderful. That is what it was designed for. But in this instance, the tool has, in an effective way, been used for or on the incorrect people.
Because if I understand the process, and I also handed someone's firearm who's now living overseas, when you hand in your firearm now, it's not an anonymous thing. You have to prove your ID. It'll be sent for ballistic testing. For me, that kind of was always defeating the purpose of a guy who had a truly illegal firearm that was stolen, that you never had any rights to be in possession of at any stage, is now going to say, well, I'm going to give them my ID number, it's going to be tested, and if it's linked to a crime, I'm going to be charged. So
Exactly.
it never was really looking at dealing with those kind of firearms.
No, I mean, as you say, a criminal is not going to go to the police station, identify him or herself and hand in a firearm that was used in a crime. So it's absolutely targeting the wrong people when it could be doing so much good.
And perhaps last one comment. I mean, the funding for this, you're a non-profit organization, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
Where does all your funding come from?
So our funding is from our members and from people who donate to our legal fund. And I, to a certain extent, don't think members understand what this costs for GOSA to keep this rolling. So we are absolutely 100% dependent on our members keeping up their memberships and donating to this legal fund.
And of course, the state literally has unlimited funds to fight this.
Exactly. We're up against a huge beast which we cannot compete with in terms of funding. They get their work for free, practically. And our members need to contribute, which is sad because they have to take the money out of their pockets to fight for a firearm that's theirs.
Yeah. So one of the other questions that often pops up is the status of the green licenses. And I've heard very conflicting things from if you migrated to the white license, your green has no longer any relevance, and other people saying something different. So what is the actual status in terms of those old-fashioned green licenses?
The 2009 SA Hunters judgment says that all green licenses are valid. The judgment does not specify if you have a white license and white under the Firearms Control Act, then your white license has replaced your green license. To read in that it has replaced or that you have merged over is simply grasping at straws. The judgment says your green license is valid. It does not make note of the status of your white license. Therefore, green is good.
Thanks very much, Annika. Well, I hope you enjoyed that and definitely walking away with far more understanding as to what your legal rights are as a firearms owner in South Africa, especially if your license has subsequently expired. So keep watching us, please, for further interesting content. Subscribe to our channel and we'll definitely keep you up to date as to what's going on in the firearms world in South Africa. So I'm Gerard Labuskaghni for Zulu Alpha Firearms Channel. Be safe, be legal, and be responsible.